We're live. Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, assalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone. Khalid, welcome.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's so good to see you, Sister Ayollarga, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much
Alhamdulillah.
for having me. Jazakumullahu khair. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, mashallah. There's no need to introduce Khalid. She has been a guest speaker on the RYS podcast twice before. I think first time around we talked about stay-at-home mom depression. And our second time we had very enlightening, interesting discussion on feminism. But today it's going to be a different. We're here to discuss Khalid's latest project, Wife School. How do you feel about it, Khalid?
Honestly, I feel really good about it, alhamdulillah. It's just there's been so much tawfiq. And alhamdulillah, and I've asked Allah for tawfiq. I made a lot of dua about this project before starting it, and then throughout. We're about halfway through our, I guess you could say semester or so. And alhamdulillah, it seems to be going well. People are very happy. Students seem to love it. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, feeling really good.
Mashallah. So let's jump straight in, yeah? First of all, wife school, doesn't it sound a bit odd, like the name? Wife is something that we become automatically the moment we get married, right? Why wife school? Like, why do we have to go to school in order to learn how to become a wife?
Yes. So I totally understand the question. And actually, the intro of the class, which is actually a free kind of preview, it's the first session, I go into this exact question because, in my mind, the title of the wife school, the title of the course, is meant to be thought-provoking. It is meant to be provocative. And the idea behind it is basically just as you said. I think most of us, or almost all of us, expect that a wife is just something you become. Like the day you get married, you're a wife. Like what does anyone need to do? What does anyone need to teach me? What do I'm just a wife. It's just something I instantly become. And
learn on the go.
To be instantly good at it. I'm going to instantly, immediately be a, an amazing wife, because just by virtue of how amazing I generally am, And while you're probably amazing, inshallah, that's not the point. I think the point for me is when you want to be a doctor, you go to medical school. And there's a very laid out path, a very specific path that is laid out for you step by step. You do your undergrad, you go to medical school itself. At least this is how it works in the US. Then you finish residency, and then you go to, if you want to do a fellowship, you do your fellowship and specialization, and then you become a full-fledged doctor with all of the certifications and everything that you need to be recognized as a doctor, and all the training that you get along the way. And it's years and years. It's like almost a full decade. And for some people, it's over a decade of intense training to become a doctor. And then to be a lawyer, you go to law school. You go to 3 years of law school. Generally, it's 3 years and a lot of training, a lot of intense exams. You take your bar exam at the end. And if you qualify, you will become a lawyer. And you can specialize further, etc., right? And then if this is how it works, you want to be a person in business, you go to business school and you get trained. But who trains us to be a wife? That's the point.
But do we need qualification or a degree to become a wife? Isn't it something that you learn being around your mothers and grandmothers, like having women that you look up to? Was this course born out of your own struggles of, I don't know, like in the first few years of marriage, or is there any background story to this course?
Basically, right. So that's the name comes from this idea of school, like medical school, law school. Now we have wife school. So that's the idea of just the name. But where it comes from is, yes, as you said, it's not only my story, but it's the story of many, many women that I know personally, who have reached out to me, who I don't know personally, who have just reached out to me online saying, I don't know how to be a wife. I just got married a month ago and I'm floundering. I feel like I'm drowning and I don't know how to do it. And people reaching out to me, sisters, saying, I'm going to be married in 6 months. I did my nikah, my kitab, or I'm engaged, or I'm talking to this brother with my family and my wali, but I'm scared. I'm scared to death of marriage, Khalid. You write about marriage on Facebook. you make it seem so rosy and so like happy and like
Yeah.
all roses and sunshine. But I'm scared. I've never seen a good marriage. I've never seen a good wife. My parents were fighting growing up. My mother, I've seen my mother miserable, and I'm scared. I don't want that fate. And some women reach out to me saying, I was engaged. I was almost going to be married. I backed out. I got cold feet
Mm.
because I hate marriage. That in some part of me hates marriage. Some part of me loves marriage, which is why I was on the verge of getting married. But then I backed out because the other part of me hates it and fears it. So the point that I'm seeing, and my own experience actually mirrors this as well a little bit in some regards. So I grew up seeing a lot of very unhappy, dysfunctional, unhealthy marriages around me as a
Yes.
kid, as a kid, as a little girl.
Yes.
And then as a teenager, I grew up seeing more and more people just stuck in these dysfunctional marriages where the woman is miserable, the man is miserable, the wife makes her husband miserable and depressed every day. He makes her miserable and depressed every day. And I grew up just thinking, oh my God, is this marriage? No thanks. I think I'm good. Wallah. And I went to college thinking, and that was my feminist phase. And I remember thinking to myself, thank God, like, I don't ever want to be married. If that's what marriage is, don't sign me
Mm.
up. Like, I don't need that in my life. And part of it was I don't need a man, blah blah blah. The feminist narrative, which was it became embedded in my brain because of feminist influence. But part of it was just what I had seen. I hadn't seen a very happy marriage, not very many. I hadn't seen
Yes.
healthy relationships. I had never seen a wife who was truly fulfilled and happy and proud to be a wife, and not proud in a bad way like arrogance, but just happy with the title of wife. It was always slightly demeaned. It was always just a little bit dismissed and just a little bit looked down upon. So I'd never seen
Mm.
a happy, proud, fulfilled, excited wife who was healthy, whose marriage was healthy. I'd never seen that. It was like an enigma to me. So I remember
Mm.
thinking when my now husband, who I am actually married to, when he proposed the first time, I said no, no, thank you, because that had been my whole thing growing up. Like, if this is what marriage is, no, thank you. And I don't want to live a miserable, wretched, depressed life of silent treatment for weeks on end or months on end. Sometimes I'd seen that, or
Yeah.
screaming fights every other day. I'm not a screamer. I'm not gonna, And if I have someone screaming in my face, that's stressful, and I don't want to give the silent treatment. So I'd never seen people in a marriage interact and talk things out like mature adults for very long. So I remember I had this very bleak idea of what marriage is, how marriage should go, what a wife looks like, what a husband looks like.
Mm.
Now, fast forward to when I did get married a few years into my undergrad. I was still in college, and the same brother came back and he reproposed, and talked to my father and talked to my family, and alhamdulillah, we got married, and we're still married. Alhamdulillah, we've been married for
Did
almost
Did you get married whilst you were a student, right?
Yes, I got married in my last year of college before I graduated. Yes. So
Yes.
alhamdulillah, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Marriage is alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, with the fadl of Allah and the ni'mah of Allah on me, undeservedly. Marriage has been one of the best things that has ever happened to me. One of the best ni'am and blessings of Allah that He has ever given to me. Alhamdulillah, and I
Mm.
never want to lose sight of that, and I never want to be ungrateful or take it for granted or just assume it's my natural right. No, I
Mm.
never want that. So I want to stay grateful and stay thankful to Allah primarily and to my husband, alhamdulillah.
Mm.
So do you know what I'm saying? So it was such a shift for me, going from a very strong anti-marriage sentiments based on feminism and like thoughts in my head, but also based on observable reality, things
But
I
what
really see.
changed you, though? What changed you? A lot of us grew up with the idea of marriage is a trap, right?
Hmm.
And do you think, does it primarily come from not seeing healthy marriages like in real life around us with our, aunties and sisters and neighbors? Or do we pick up this, there's like hidden values and beliefs being pushed in pop culture or books or media? Where do we develop this idea that marriage is a trap? Because I grew up with that. I was very career driven, and I
Hmm.
remember I used to write a diary. I remember writing like, oh, I will never get married until I have a solid income, like proper job, and have these things. And sometimes I read and I laugh, subhanallah, like but where do we develop these ideas? Like, Where does it come from? This
I think it's
marriage
everything.
is a trap.
Yes, I think we do have this idea. It's very prevalent. Not every girl or every young woman, but many, many of us, maybe the majority of us. And I think it's everything you just listed. It is the our reality, our baggage. I call this baggage. We have this childhood baggage from seeing her, perhaps our own parents growing up and living in a household filled with tension, because children are incredibly perceptive. I have children now, alhamdulillah, and I see how perceptive, how quick and sharp these kids are. They understand and they observe everything. Well, let me take it back. They don't understand, but they observe and they will catch everything, even if they don't fully understand the meaning, which sometimes makes it much worse. But they can sense very easily. They can sense tension, fighting, like an electric atmosphere of like, you make one wrong move, mama will go off on you, or baba will go off on you. Someone says something the wrong way or in the wrong tone, or it's an electric atmosphere of tension, of just you're walking on eggshells. A lot of people have grown up like this. So part of it is this baggage, right? Our own, we've seen our own parents' marriage, or for some of us, it's my aunt or my uncle or my cousin or my big sister's best friend or my neighbor, whatever, right? But we all have people like this. And so we call this anecdotal evidence. But each of us, we have our whole pile of growing, this mountain of anecdotal evidence to support the theory that marriage is a trap and marriage is a living hell. Marriage is a nightmare. I want nothing to do with marriage because I just want to live in peace. I'm not a fighter. I'm not a person who likes to fight. I don't like drama. Nobody wants drama. Unless I guess some people live for the drama, but most of us, we're just normal people. We don't want to start things. We just want to live calm, peaceful lives, and we just want to get on with life, right? Especially as we get older. So because of this mountain of baggage that we've seen from all these people's marriages that we observed with our own eyes, it's usually not even hearsay. It's often things we've seen, or even, as we said, a household that we grew up in. This is how we were raised. So there's that, and then there's talking to other people. So there's the hearsay, things that he said, that she said, that they had a miserable marriage, or that her husband beat her up, or she was beating up on her husband. Because abuse and all these types of things, these problems go both ways. Sometimes it's the wife who is a tyrant and she is terrorizing her husband and he lives in fear of her, and that marriage exists. It's a miserable marriage. And sometimes it's the other way around. But usually because of feminism, we stifle the stories that go against the feminist narrative. So we don't usually hear much about the man who was abused by his wife, or who was terrorized by her, or who lived in fear of his wife every day, and he just tried to appease her and not get in her way because she's the dictator, And hear often,
surely the ratio of men abusing women versus women abusing men, like, it should be much less, right? It's usually men, or is it just the stories that we hear?
Yes,
is it assumption?
Yes, it's actually, so they call it. Yes, it's shocking. It is shocking. Wallahi, Sister Iroda, I understand, because I had your exact attitude just a few years ago, not long ago. And I remember talking to my husband about it, and I said, Daniel, if I wanted to abuse you, I would have a very hard time trying. It would be like funny. It would be laughable if I tried to hit you, or he's much bigger than I am. He's a foot taller than I am. He's heavier than I am. He has a lot more muscles than I do. I'm a joke. I'm very short and very small. And so I don't know how I would, if I tried to hurt him, I wouldn't be able to hurt him, So I told him that, and we had this whole conversation about it. And he said, there are a lot of ways, like, it's not as simple as that. It's not as like linear as that. Oh, women are smaller and usually shorter on average. They have less muscle mass. They have less upper body strength. Therefore, they can never abuse a man. That's actually not true. This is like what we tell ourselves. This is like,
no, they do abuse, but I'm talking about, like, where do we get the statistics? I mean, like, surely more men oppress women than women oppressing men, right?
That's actually not right. That's what I'm telling you. The stat is actually closer to 50-50. It's very
really.
Yes, it's like 51-49. It's pretty much 50-50. And the question is, why don't we know this? Why do we never hear this? And our first instinct is to say that's not true. That's a lie. That's a made up statistic. It actually isn't. If you want to I know this is not the topic of this conversation, but this is something I go into in one of the sessions of Wife School, which is why I do things like this. But just very quickly, there's something called the file drawer dilemma. And the file drawer dilemma is basically there's a hegemonic narrative that is the mainstream narrative. This is what we hear. This is what the established mainstream like story is, which is feminism, right? Which is exactly
Yeah.
what you said. It generally is, we all understand that women are usually the victims because they're smaller and softer, and men are usually the aggressors and the abusers. So woman equals victim, helpless victim, innocent angel. Man equals oppressive tyrant, abusive, horrible human being monster, right? That's like we have these equations. Woman equals victim, man equals oppressor. So this is the narrative. This is what feminism tries to push on us and teach us and train us. And most of us have gotten it. Most of us have been very, very quick to catch on and be on board. Then what do you do with the stories? Yes, what do you do with the stories of anything that goes against this, anything that contradicts this hegemonic narrative? What you do, the science or psychologists and researchers have called this the file drawer dilemma, because basically what happens is in academia, people have tried to do, researchers and psychologists and sociologists have done very many studies. There's like a meta study of actually what they call intimate partner violence, which is basically another name for domestic violence, but it's intimate partner violence. So boyfriend and girlfriend, husband and wife, any sort of intimate relationship where you have an intimate partner. Muslims, that would mean husband and wife. But basically they tried to study to see exactly what is the statistic, as close as we can get it, as much as we can understand it. And that meta study found that it's actually, that's the number, what I'm telling you is about, it's 50-50 almost. It's very close. Yes, and not just emotional abuse. Like women are masters at emotional abuse, psychological abuse, what they call things like gaslighting.
I know. Like being passive aggressive.
Yes, but the crazy thing is here, this is what blew my mind, is even with physical violence, like physical abuse, which is what I was trying to argue with my husband about, thinking a woman can't physically abuse a man. Come on now. We all know this. Like, come on. It's obvious, Well, what they found is even she will take something and bang, throw it at him or bang him over the head with it, like a glass vase. She'll take it and smash it on his head. Like, so she will use objects. She'll use tools and just everyday things, whatever she can get her hands on, to be able to hurt him, more than just using her sheer muscle mass. Because yes, usually it's going to be smaller. And in in partners, certain intimate partner relationships, the wife is actually, it's not like me and my husband where there's a great physical differential, but sometimes the wife is actually almost as strong as her husband, or they're very close in size. But so anyway, so they found these findings about with their research about intimate partner violence, that it's very close to 50-50. Now, this goes against the feminist narrative. Now, have we heard of this? The idea is, what happened was, the research has been suppressed. People have lost their jobs in academia, at the universities where this type of knowledge or these types of findings were trying to be disseminated. This was never going to be allowed to happen, and it still isn't. So it leaks out very slowly and very subtly, but it's really not allowed to be disseminated. It's not allowed to be published. It's not allowed to get out there to the masses. So most of us have never heard of it and probably will never hear of it, unless you're really digging and trying to go out of your way to find out. And this is called the file drawer problem. So anything that goes against the mainstream dominant narrative and contradicts it will get filed away very quietly in some side file cabinet, in some drawer, so that it doesn't disrupt. It doesn't disrupt the narrative. Because we are comfortable thinking what we think. We don't want to disrupt. And the powers that be, especially in academia has been verifiably, obviously controlled by the feminist movement. This is not debatable. This is something that you can read about, and it's, it's pretty.
That's very interesting. That's a very interesting point. That you mentioned that you didn't see many happy marriages or couples around you growing up. Is it still the case? Because as far as I know, marriage is still a struggle for most Muslim women, They may be both practicing men and women. They pray their salah 5 times a day. They try to raise kids like a decent family, but they still struggle, like marriage still struggles. So many women are suffering within their marriages, right? So to this day, subhanAllah, I don't see happy couples like who always understand each other, you know, who are always supportive of each other, who help each other to regulate their emotions and get through the tough times. It's like you said, oftentimes, like they get through tough times with silent treatments, with being, you know, passive aggressive. How about you? Like in your experience, is it still this case? Like, do you see happy marriages around you?
Wallah, alhamdulillah, I'm very blessed to be in a very happy marriage, alhamdulillah, and to see around me very happy, very thriving, healthy marriages. So alhamdulillah, now as an adult, now in this stage of my
Yeah.
life, I see it and I realize how much I didn't understand, and I realize
Mm.
what else is out there that is a possibility that I never knew about. No one ever told me, and I'd never seen it. So alhamdulillah, so yes, I do. But of course, what I want to emphasize here is make a delicate distinction between a happy marriage and a healthy marriage. Generally, a happy marriage, like a healthy marriage, will mostly be happy, but it is not going to be happy every single day, and that's okay because this is
Mm.
the dunya, right? So I think when we think in our head, oh, I'm not happy every single day, man, my marriage is horrible. My marriage is the worst because I'm not happy every single day. The problem there is not that your marriage isn't good or it's not healthy. It could very well be a healthy marriage. The problem there is your internal expectation. It's your mental standards that you have for yourself, for your husband, and for your
Mm.
marriage. And they're not the right standards because Allah says in the Quran, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We have
So I
certainly,
created you in turmoil.
yes, we have created the human being in kabad. What does kabad mean? Reflect on this word. I think about it very often. The word kabad. It's only three
Yes.
letters. Kaf, ba, dal. Kabad means toil, pain, struggle, and the idea of it is endless, like ongoing, recurring
Yes.
struggle that does not end. It's toil, physical labor, difficulty, this type of thing.
Yes.
And the Mufassirun who talk about it, like Al-Tabari, Al-Qurtubi, Ibn Kathir, if you read the tafsir of just this ayah, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ, what they say is that the human being, whether male or female, the human being was born into a life that is a series of struggles. When he's first born,
Yeah.
right, even the birth, like entering the birth canal and being squeezed out, out of the mother's body and into this dunya, that is a difficult experience for an infant who's just entering the world. It's difficult.
Yeah.
And the baby, the first thing he does is cry. And then it's difficult with breastfeeding for the baby, right? And it's difficult because he experiences hunger for the first time. Because in the womb, everything was accounted for. He never even felt hunger, right? Or thirst. And the baby
Yeah.
is introduced to these struggles as a 1 day old, as a baby who's 1 hour old, right? And then the teething, it's very hard to cut his teeth. This is something that's literally written in the tafsir. It was very interesting because they all say that cutting teeth is very painful. And
Yes.
then the baby cries, and everything is painful for the baby. It's very difficult. As a baby, as an infant, we all go through this. This is kabad. And then the series of steps basically that everybody goes through in life, whether male or female, the struggle to grow up, the struggle to be disciplined, being disciplined by a superior, usually a parent or a guardian, learning things like from a teacher or a parent if you're being homeschooled. But the process of learning is not, it's a struggle because you're constantly coming up against your own limitations. So it's very frustrating. And I teach children because I teach my own children as a homeschool mom. And you can see how frustrating it can be in different moments
Mm.
when they reach a point where they don't know how to get past it and they need to learn a concept that they're struggling to learn. It's very frustrating. So the Mufassirun will talk about this, learning and then growing up, trying to make a living, and then getting married, like the hastening to get married, the hurry, the rush to get married, and then during marriage, the struggle of marriage, and then trying to build something, whatever it is, building a legacy or building a family or building your job or trying to make money, illness,
Mm.
dealing with debt, dealing with financial problems, dealing with the death of people around you, and then old age, the decline of physical health, poor eyesight, loss of hearing, joint pain, bone pain, etc., etc. And then death itself, and maut, is very painful. And then in the barzakh,
Mm.
so being asked in the grave. So Mufassirun will say what this ayah means is the human being's existence, the experience of what it means to be human, is just a series of painful and difficult struggles. So when you
Mm.
think about
So
that,
you're saying that marriage is hard because it's meant to be hard.
yes, because everything in this dunya is hard, and that's not a cynical, viewpoint. I'm not saying, oh, everything is hard, nothing is worth it, nothing means anything. So we're not trying to say that. But the idea is manage your expectations. This is something big that, especially, I think, to be fair and to be frank, especially us
So,
women, we need to hear.
you mentioned the healthy marriage. So what is your idea of healthy marriage then? Like, could you give me like top 3 things? Like, oh, if you have this 1, 2, 3, then you are in a healthy marriage. So everybody can just do a checklist, right?
Well, I've never thought of it in this exact way before, but I will try to, off the top of my head, give you my top 3,
Go ahead.
signs of a happy marriage, I guess. But
Yeah.
I would say the first thing, the most important thing, is being able to understand, going into marriage, understanding and accepting. It's crucial to accept. So understanding and accepting your own nature and the nature
Okay.
of the person you're dealing with. This is, you gotta have this. If you don't have this understanding, you are doomed. Marriage is going to be a greater struggle than, for you, than maybe it needs to be. Basically, what I mean is femininity and masculinity. And this is actually something I'm talking about these days with my students in the class. We've gotten to the portion.
First one is acceptance, right?
Yes, understanding and acceptance of your
Okay.
own feminine, especially if I'm talking to women, we'll say, I'm talking to the sisters right now. So I'll
Yeah.
say your knowledge and your understanding and acceptance of your femininity and your husband's masculinity. You got to
Okay.
understand and accept those differences, because gender differences are very real on a biological level, and they manifest in our actions and in our thoughts and in our attitudes and how we behave. And if you treat your husband like a woman, because you're a woman, so you treat him the way that you think people should be treated, because as a woman, this is how it works for you. You know how they say the golden rule is treat people how you would like to be treated. This is a mess. If you act on this is a mess. Your marriage is going to be a mess. Your life is a mess. I don't treat my husband the way I would like to be treated, and he doesn't treat me the way he would like to be treated. Of course, there's some overlap. So I'm not saying we are two completely different alien creatures. He's here, I'm here, and there's no overlap. There's certainly some overlap. We both want to be treated kindly. We both want to be treated with respect and with, gentleness, etc., etc. But the specifics, they are wildly different. Like, I want love more than anything. He wants respect more than anything. So I give him respect. I make sure to give him respect, give him honor, to really honor and respect him and give him his dignity. I want love. I would like respect. I don't want to be disrespected, just like he doesn't want to be unloved. But if he has to choose one thing, above all, he wants my respect. And above all, I want his love. So he treats me lovingly. I treat him respectfully. You see the difference? And it's because I understand my femininity and I understand his masculinity, and I'm not mad at it. I'm not angry. That's okay. I've accepted it. Do you understand? So I think this is the
number 1.
Yes, that's number 1. So that is the basis of a happy marriage, or more accurately, I would say a healthy marriage. Number 2, let's see now. The ability to communicate effectively. And that stems from why I listed number 1 as number 1. If you understand who your husband is, that he's a man and he's not a woman like you, and if you understand yourself that you are a woman, you're not a man like your husband, and he understands that as well on his end, then what stems from that is understanding how I communicate as a woman and how that's very different from how he communicates as a man. And again, you got to accept it. You can't be mad at it. You can't say, well, he doesn't even like to talk about his emotions. He's so dumb. He's so emotionally stunted. No, he's not emotionally stunted. You are a woman. You like to talk about your emotions. You're incredibly articulate and good at talking about your emotions, and that's great. He's not a woman, though. He's not. So he's not as articulate as you, because there's areas of the brain, the language center, that in a male brain are very different from a female brain. So the male brain, the language center, it lights up when they do brain scans, it lights up only one hemisphere. So a specific portion of one hemisphere. This is the language center in the brain for the male. For the female brain, the language center lights up both hemispheres, multiple areas of both hemispheres. So we as women, we are incredibly communicative. We are very expressive. We like to talk, and it's not our fault. It's not a bad thing. It's not anything we should be ashamed of. It's not an insult, but we do. So it's okay. But men, they don't like to talk as much. Physically, their brain is wired differently, and that's okay too. It's not an insult. It's not embarrassing. It's totally fine. This is what I mean about understanding and accepting. So, but you got to work out between you how you're going to communicate. If you're going to have silent treatment, it's not an effective communication method. If you are going to have screaming fights with him, it's not an effective communication method. If you're going to cuss each other out and call each other names, you're emotionally stunted. You're this, you're that. And he says, well, you are a nag. You're a nag. You are, I don't know. You're a chatterbox. You never shut up. And that's not an effective communication method, right? So what you need to do is figure out how he works and how to best communicate with him in a way that will resonate with him, given that he's a man and not a woman. And he will do the same. He should also give you the same courtesy. I'm not saying everything falls on just the wife.
Well, what's the most, what do you think? What's the most women, or what's the most common mistake that women make in this regard? Like when it comes to communication, is it silent treatment, or is it being like, oh, you just got to guess what I'm going through and not saying what they're actually going through and leaving their husband in a limbo, like, or why don't you just get it? I'm just banging my cup of tea on the table. What do you think it is? How do they like communication?
For what I've seen in my life, and things that I read about, and you read studies and things like this, it's what you've described. It's a combination usually of silent treatment and the guessing game. I need you to guess what I'm thinking. Go. Let's have fun with the guessing game. And the poor husband has no idea that he's playing a guessing game. He doesn't even realize there's a game. So he's just like, la la la. He's just like drinking his shea or drinking his coffee, going to work and whatever it is he's doing, And the wife, the whole time, the wife is sitting over here fuming. She is furious because he is failing at the game that she set up for him in her mind. He doesn't know about, and he's not doing well in the game. But the reality is the guy doesn't know they're playing a game. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you're having a fight with a person who doesn't realize he's in a fight. And then what happens is usually you will bang your cup, you'll bang the dishes as you're washing the dishes. You'll bang all the cabinet doors shut, like extra loud. You'll snap at him, give him a dirty look, just glare at him from across the room. You won't return his salams or, mumble.
Yeah, Salam alaikum, you'll be like, alaikum salam.
Yeah, exactly. Or, things like this. Like, so this is what you'll do. This is called being passive aggressive. It is not okay. And then you'll go into a period of silent treatment. And then if really things come to a head and they really escalate and everything just kind of builds up,
blow up.
This will build up. You will have a screaming fight. You will, like a volcano. You're going to rupture.
Blow up.
All the lava that you've been holding inside that has been slowly like creeping up into this volcano will just erupt up out of the volcano, and lava and fire and ash will dominate the entire household. It will cover you. You will be covered in ash, and your husband and your children and the four walls of your house. So it's a very ugly scene. This is what I've seen firsthand, and this is also what research supports. So this is just, and we've all kind of incidentally seen this, I think.
Okay, what's number 3 of a sign of a healthy marriage?
All right, so we said masculinity and femininity, and we said communication. And I would say being able to iron out differences, or like learning how to fight, like the art of fighting, I think, which is different from communicating, because communication, of course, it has to do with fights as well, but communication is much broader than fighting. It's just how to talk to him, like talk to him respectfully. Do you know what that looks like? Do you know what that sounds like? Do you ever think about your tone when you talk to your husband? Not in a fight. So that's number 2, this communication point. Or talk to him when he's ready to be talked to. Do not meet him at the door with, oh my God, you'll never guess what the kids did to me today. Oh my God, everything sucks. When he's just coming home from work, you're literally opening the door. This is how you greet him, right? So this is the idea of communication. The third point, it's related, but I would say slightly different, is learning how to fight when you are actually in a fight. So say there's disagreements. Not everything's hunky-dory. Not everything is going perfectly. You say left, he says right. What do you do? Which
is inevitable to happen, by the way.
Of course. You're never going to get away from that, because marriage is a partnership or a relation. I don't like the word partnership. So scratch that. Marriage is a relationship between two people, and they're two different people. And as we said, they're two different creations of Allah, the man and the woman. They're not the same creation of Allah, although we're both human, but we are two different genders. So marriage is a relationship between these two creations of Allah. Now, because it's not one person, they will differ. That's fine. It's not an insult to anybody. They will differ. and you want one thing, one day, and he'll want something else. You want the opposite of it. What do? Whose opinion, do you go with, or whose idea do you actually do? Because you can't do both. Sometimes they're mutually exclusive things. You can't have this and that. What do you do? How do you settle that without hurt feelings, without carrying resentment with you? After it, like say you go with his opinion or with his idea, and you do what he wants, which is the opposite of what you wanted. How do you not be resentful? How do you resolve it in a way where you're truly, genuinely okay and you're at peace and you've worked it out, versus years of resentment? Like, that's what I mean. It's like you're carrying a bag, like a heavy load on your back of every argument and every fight you've ever had with him. And the resentment just grows over the marriage. And this is what happens when you see 40, 50, sometimes 60-year-old wives who are older wives who've been in a marriage for, many decades. And sometimes the venom that they'll use to speak about their husband is crazy. It's like scary, And it's because of fights never being really fully resolved, like issues never really being addressed truly. So, and she didn't make an effort, and he didn't make an effort. And now she's resentful as heck. Like she hates him, So I think learning.
Sometimes I hear from like older women, like we just roommates living under the same roof,
Yes.
I'm not confrontational and he's not confrontational. We hate having arguments and fights, but I think it's a sign of a healthy marriage to be able to come and have those arguments from time to time, and just be vulnerable, just open up. And it is going to be very uncomfortable, but it is those uncomfortable moments that bring comfort in the long run, right?
Yes, absolutely. You have to, certain things, you can't escape them. You can't go around them or circumvent them. You have to go through them. And if you don't know how to go through them, then you're not going to succeed. It's not going to be a healthy marriage.
Oh, we've got questions coming up. MashaAllah, more and more sisters joining. Sisters, alaikum salam, Sister Samia. If you are listening, please grab a share button, share with your family and friends. This conversation may be indeed useful for many Muslim women. So my next question, I'm Khalid. Big issues for healthy Muslim marriages for women, yeah? Number 1, feminism. Number 2, marriage being out of fashion. Number 3, lack of decent men. We have to agree that some men don't fulfill their rights, or, they just abuse their position. Number 4, pornography. Number 5, negative outlook on housewives. Which two, in your opinion, are the biggest obstacles to get married and to stay married for Muslim women? Shall I just say out of feminism? Because I know you're going to say.
You know me too well. Yes.
Listen, feminism, marriage being out of fashion, lack of decent men, pornography, and negative outlook on housewives. So pick your top 2.
Top 2, feminism and negative outlook on being a housewife. Bam.
For Muslim women to get married and to stay married.
Yes, feminism will make you not want to get married. Actually, well, they both will make you not want to get married, and they will both will make you not want to stay married if you accidentally got married. So feminism, because basically, okay, so I talked about this in I think our second session of wife school, but the idea is feminism. When I say feminism, it's a very vague, abstract term. We hear it a lot, so it kind of lost a lot of meaning. Like, oh, feminism is making our marriages fail. Okay, what is that? That's true, but what does that mean? What it means is there are macro level factors and there are micro level factors that create a system, like a whole web. It's like a complete system, right? If you imagine this like web of like lies and like systems upon systems, that what they do is incentivize divorce or incentivize independence, like hyper independence, hyper individualism, at the expense of marriage. They disincentivize marriage. This system. So it's not to say, I'm not here to blame sisters and say, oh, sisters have so much work to do. Sisters are just like horrible. No, it's not women's fault, and it's also not men's fault. It's actually the system that has been created under the liberal world order. This is the reality. So macro level things are Basically, when you think about education, like the public school system, what you go through, kinds of things that seep into your mind and sink into your psyche, just from when you were this high and you were in kindergarten, you went to first grade, you went through elementary, then middle, then high school. Just that public school system alone, that'll do a lot of damage. If you're, especially, I'm not necessarily talking about the Arab world or the Muslim world, like Egypt, where I'm from, but certainly in the West, certainly in a place like the US where I live now, right? So that public school system, this is one of the macro level factors up here that will really affect and get in the way of you wanting to be a traditional wife in a traditional marriage with a traditional husband. That'll kill it. Then if it doesn't kill it, when you finish high school and graduate the public school system, then you go to academia, the higher education, like university life. That'll do a lot. And then, so this is what I mean when I say feminism. It's not just, feminism, this amorphous factor in the air. No, this is in these systems. Then you go to the workplace because you have a lot of debt from your university years. You're not like, sitting here just, what's my dream job? No, it's like chop, chop. You're on the clock. You signed the dotted line over right here. When you got all your student loans, now you got to pay them back. And you're only 20 or 21 years old, but the clock, you're on a timer and there's riba. So the interest is accruing. So you need to go run and get a job that will pay the incredible, like debilitating, crippling loans that you now owe. So you don't have time for a marriage. Or if you do, you're not going to devote most of your energy to your husband because you're trying to, it's like you're in this trying to pay off the debt. And then, so that's the workplace. And then all of these different things like the legal system, family court system, the muscular police state that we live in, where a woman, if she feels unsafe, she literally she doesn't even have to say my husband is a dangerous man or I'm in actual danger. All she has to say, do you know what she has to say? 3 words.
What?
I feel unsafe. I feel unsafe. That's it. She calls the cops, 911. The cops will come pick her up. She'll pack her bag. As they stand the husband outside the house by the front door with a police officer standing with him to monitor him. Maybe they handcuff him, maybe they don't, depending on what they think the severity of the situation is. The woman gathers some of her things and she goes to the police station with the cops. The husband is left wondering what happened. We were eating breakfast. I don't know what happened. That's the legal system. This is the police state. They're on the woman's side. And they always, generally in these domestic violence disputes, it's a very sad reality, but what they do is they take the side of the wife no matter what. Unless, like in the most extenuating circumstances where the husband has like a butcher knife sticking out of his shoulder, then they'll take, they'll be like, okay, she did this to you. All right. Like there's undisputable evidence because he's bleeding from what she did to him. Otherwise, short of that, they will take her side. And, so this is what we mean when we say the macro level systems. This is what.
It seeped into everything. I remember, it's mostly in the literature that we read, like novels, most of the fiction that we read growing up. And yes, it's in the textbooks, it's in the school curriculum. It's in the movies that we watch, being this strong, independent woman. And, it's everywhere, basically. And the message is so subtle. And I was discussing it with a sister. There is, we pick up values and beliefs from the things that we have been exposed to. And so we have this, we have aqidah, like we have this belief system based on the Islamic values and beliefs, but that's inactive. And then we have another belief system, which is active, which basically is what we picked up growing up. Like it's a conditioning, if this, then that. If you do this, then this will happen. So it's these subtle messages that keeps accumulating in your subconscious mind. Okay, like, I have to do this and I have to get that. I have to study well. Why? I have to go to university. Why? Because I can get a good job. Why? Because then I have a good income and then I can become like a strong, independent woman. It's like a pinnacle of, I don't know, success or
achievement, like worth, like our worth. Like I'm not worth anything if I don't have a good job. If I don't have enough degrees, I might have a degree. I need a couple of degrees. I need this many degrees. I need a PhD for me to be worth anything. And it's very sad. And I went through this myself because I graduated when I finished undergrad. I only did undergrad. So I have my undergrad degree. All of my other Harvard colleagues who graduated with me the same year, they were, a group of Muslim sisters, a group of Muslim women, and we are friends and I love them and they, it was great. But they none of them got married that, right, during high school, or I'm sorry, during college. I was the only one who got married in our college years. And so as
Same
a
here.
yeah, yes, exactly. So
In my second year. By
oh,
the time I graduated, I had 2 kids, which was very unusual, by the way.
mashallah, that is really cool. Okay, that is amazing. Mashallah, it's not something you see
Alhamdulillah.
often, especially in today's age. But
Yeah.
it's still an anomaly. So I was that anomaly, and then every one of them. One went to Harvard Medical School to be a doctor. That's what I mean about wife school. And you go to medical
Yeah.
school, we have all these paths laid out for us. One went to law school, Harvard Law. One went to work on Wall Street. She was a math major and she went to Wall Street. So all these big name, like heavy hitter careers. And then I was here, like over here, like I'm a housewife. And I felt
You
like
felt like a loser?
I felt like a loser. I felt like I was worthless. And we would meet up every now and then, every like few months, we would get together and have a little reunion, like a girls thing. And everybody would be like, oh my God, med school is so hard, but I love it. And, the other girl would be like, yeah, I love law school. It's really dry and boring, but I wouldn't trade it for
Yes.
anything. It's like, it's really worth it. I'm so
Yes.
excited to be a lawyer. And I was over here sitting in the corner, just kept my mouth shut. Like, what am I going to say? I'm a housewife? Like, what? So I struggled with
I'm
this.
really enjoying scrubbing my pants and, cleaning my house and hoovering.
I enjoy being a slave. And we have these notions embedded in our brain.
Yes.
I had them embedded in my brain. So I'm not projecting here. I'm talking about myself. I was like, they probably see me as a slave to my husband. And they probably think I'm just like this like worthless, lazy leech, leeching off my husband. It's either I'm a leech, leeching off of him, taking advantage of him, or either he's a tyrant, he's a slave master who's taking advantage of me as a slave. I don't know which it is, but both of these are bad, Like
I think that's the problem with most women who were raised being, like career driven, and the moment they get married, it's like they've hit a hard rock, they've hit their heads against the hard rock, like, oh my God, maybe I made a mistake, like what am I doing? And I know, like I work at the university, right? And I know lecturers, professors, some of them with PhDs, and sometimes we sit and talk, and they do have a hard time being a wife. They do have, like we have a hard time raising their children. So having all these degrees, undergrad, postgrad, master's, PhD, does not make you automatically a good mother or good wife, or it's completely different things. I often ponder, like, subhanAllah, that you can be so educated on one front and still fail behind the closed doors in your own home. Like you just can't figure out, like, why can I learn so many facts and statistics and teach so many students, but can't figure out how to talk to my teenager, for example. It really is a totally different dynamics. It's different dimension.
It's a different skill set. It's a very different skill set. So like you said, like I can learn facts and figures, I can learn complicated statistics, and I can learn, all these things, all these theories and all these different things, and I can look up the research on this and this in whatever field I'm in. But when I go home, I don't know how to change a diaper, and I don't know how to cook, and my cleaning game is terrible, my house is a mess, and I don't know how to communicate with my husband, and I also secretly hate him. And it's like your life domestically is a mess. It's in shambles, but your professional life is perfect. But we've been taught that this is okay, that your professional life trumps your private life or your domestic life. We've been taught that this, like, forget your domestic life. Who even needs that? You're a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. So if your husband is holding you back like that, call the cops on him or just divorce him. Whatever. You get half. You get half his money anyway. You keep the house, you keep the kids, you get half his assets. Like, what's not to love? This is what I mean about the legal system, the family court system, and how it incentivizes divorce and gets in the way of you staying married as a traditional wife. Because we've been taught that the real importance, the real success lies over here in this public realm, your public persona as a successful meaning rich and status conscious woman who's independent, who has proven her worth, who has attained this many degrees, who is making this much income, who has this much status in society as a professor or a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or whatever, right? And other stuff is nice too, It's not as important. We all kind of know that, right? Like it's this like, you know, like,
Yeah.
you feel me? It's this kind of like wink, wink kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
marriage, I mean, yeah, if you want to get married, okay, get married if you must. God knows why, but it's not the real. Like we all know that's not real. The real thing is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So then you get
Yes.
married, you struggle because your husband will demand things of you, and it's his
Yeah.
right. He's justified because it's a critical human relationship, as you will demand
Mm.
things of him. So it's okay. But if
Yeah.
he makes any demands on you, you don't like it. You're indignant. It's like, how dare you? You sit there and shut up. Like, you stay in your corner like a good little puppy. You don't make any demands. You have the audacity to demand things of me. I am a doctor. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like an
Yeah.
internal attitude. So it's not even, what I think is interesting is that it's not even the degrees themselves. It's not the career. It's not having a job. It's the attitude that comes with it. And what this
Mm.
is really called is an attitude of disagreeableness. So a woman, we often hear about this. A woman in a man's world, she has to almost get a little bit masculine, right? To make
Mm.
it, like, especially I'm talking about in the West. I'm not sure, maybe in Saudi Arabia or in an Arab country or a Muslim country, it maybe the dynamic is a little bit different. But
It's
certainly,
totally different.
right,
Yeah.
certainly in the West, there is no like women's sphere of like women's colleges or women's hospitals. We don't have that.
Yeah.
So what you do is, to make it in a man's world, which is like the work field or the workforce, you gotta almost get a little bit manly. So you gotta be competitive. You have to be aggressive. You have to be pushy to make it to the top, to kind of like push yourself further and further in your career to reach, you know, the pinnacle,
Mm.
right? So then you become a little bit less feminine, which we call agreeable in wife school. Agreeableness and disagreeableness are very important concepts that I think is actually one of the themes of this entire thing of wife school, how to be a wife in general. You have to be agreeable. Agreeable, okay, so this is a psychological concept. When you talk about personalities, there's
Mm.
different personality like traits. One of the biggest ones that in which men and women differ is that men on average are a lot more disagreeable, and women on average are a lot more agreeable.
More agreeable.
And what it means, yes, what it means is, some people think, oh, disagreeable is bad, agreeable is good. So it sounds like women are better than men. It sounds like men are rapists and monsters. I knew it. You know, it's not disagreeable meaning mean. It's actually disagreeable and agreeable. They're just a spectrum. If you think of like a line, like a spectrum, and
Like they're more firm.
yes, it has to do
And
with boundaries. It has to do with boundaries. So boundaries are basically, if you are agreeable, you have weak boundaries. You have porous boundaries. Like porous boundaries is like gaps. Like if I'm trying to erect a fence over here or build a wall, there's a lot of holes and gaps in my wall or in my fence. And things can come in and out, even though a boundary is supposed to keep things in or keep things out. My boundary is not going to be very good because there's a lot of gaps and holes in it. So things are easily, constantly flowing in and out of my
so
boundary.
women can sway their opinion
Yes.
easily.
Yes. And
Mm.
they, because and it's not because we're bad, it's not because we are terrible people, it's because Allah has created us a little bit softer. We like social relationships. So we like to build things
Mm.
across boundaries. So of course our boundaries are not very strong because we want to be malleable, because I want to reach out to you, you want to reach out to me,
Mm.
because we both want to be friends. So we can't have, do you know what I mean? These like stone walls that keep each other out. And because I don't want to be alone, because we are social creatures, and women especially more than men, which is totally fine because that works in
Mm.
the family, right? That works in the family. Imagine a mother with her baby. If she has this stone wall, she's not, right? Like it's not going to help you
Mm.
with pregnancy because your baby's literally inside of you. So there's
Yeah,
no
yeah, yeah.
boundary there. There's no boundary, and it's beautiful. Thank God there's no boundary. So you can carry the baby, and then you have the baby. Then you're nursing the baby. Thank God there's no boundary. You know, the baby's
Mm.
constantly on you. But men have to be different. Why? Because one excels at what the other is weak in. Like one gender
Mm.
strong point.
You fill in the gap.
Yes. So the family is perfect. So it's not because he's a monster. He's trying to help you out. Thank God for his disagreeableness. And for you, thank God for your agreeableness. But you got to fit it
Mm.
together like pieces of a puzzle. So it's okay. So you're not mad. So neither of you, you know, it's not like he's trying to hurt you or you're trying to hurt him. It's just how, that's what I mean. The number one advice I would give is understand your nature as a woman, your femininity, and understand his nature as a man, his masculinity, and love it and embrace it and accept it. So he's disagreeable, meaning what? Meaning he has, a man in general,
Like
when he builds
firm.
a boundary, it is a very firm boundary. It's not porous, it's not weak, it's not flimsy. So if someone comes up to him and pushes him, he's not going to cave. He's not going to fall back immediately and just crumble. He's going to push back. because he has to erect the boundaries and maintain them and protect them. Why? Because he can protect his family from outsiders, from attacks, from any sort of endangerment, from harm. So thank God for his boundaries, because your boundaries are not that good. But your boundaries being weak is great for inside the family. It's great. But so let's take it back to what I should say is also strong boundaries, this disagreeableness. You know what it translates to very often? It translates to justice and a protection of people's rights. So, for example, if someone is trying to take rights from his wife that don't make any sense, like someone, like even if it's her own mother or her own sister or her own cousin or whatever, they're asking too much of his wife. The man, sometimes the wife will be like, okay, khalas, I mean, I'm too tired to do X, Y, and Z, but I'll do it because my boundaries are weak. I don't go very easily. The husband, knowing his wife, knowing she really doesn't want to, or this is not fair to ask of her, you're asking too much of her, and he knows it, and she knows it too, but she can't say no. He'll say no for you. He'll help you. Do you know what I mean? He's willing to almost self-sacrifice to be the bad guy to protect you. He wants to protect your rights because he has very strong boundaries. So where your boundaries fail, his are upheld, and that'll save you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that way, that masculine disagreeableness is beautiful because it helps you. It's like he says what you can't say, what you can't bring yourself to say, but you want to, but you won't let yourself because you're like, I feel bad. I feel guilty saying no to her. I'm not going to say no, even though she's burdening me. I'll burden myself, you know? Yeah.
When women go out to work, they change this nature, like in themselves, because they have to be firm. They don't want to be seen like weak and shaky and constantly swaying sides and
so they
changing their opinion.
Exactly. So they have to learn if you make it. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. So they have to learn, these women,
I see.
these very professional women, especially as you get higher and higher, that attitude gets stronger and stronger of disagreeableness, decisiveness, aggression, competitiveness, which are all masculine qualities. And then that's the problem. So then at home, bring that energy with you, that masculine, aggressive, dominant energy. Your husband is also like this. So you're going to do this. You're going to clash with him constantly because you married a man, but you're acting like a man. So now it's almost like you have two husbands. You don't have a husband and a wife. It's not going to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we have questions coming up. Sorry. So we have, I think you've kind of almost. So question from a 16-year-old girl from the UK. You say Muslim girls shouldn't go to university. Did you say that?
I didn't say that exactly, but there is a video where I talk about the importance of recognizing the harms, the risks, and the dangers of college education, and especially higher education. Absolutely. I stand behind it. I'm not going to walk that back. Yes. But I'm not saying each individual woman, because we each have individual circumstances that I don't know about, because I don't know you. I don't know you personally. I don't know your life. I don't know if your parents are there. I don't know if you're married or not. So I can't tell you, okay, you, average Muslim girl, do not go to college. I forbid you. I can't say that, right? But in general, we can talk about theory. We can talk about generalities. We can talk about the average. On average, what we see is a push en masse to push our daughters and our sisters and our women into the higher education, university life. And then after that, like generally the workplace, and everything that I just talked about outlines why that can be dangerous. And we haven't even touched upon everything because there's zina, drugs, sex, alcohol, haram, so we haven't even touched on everything. So you see how that might make sense to say, hey guys, for sisters, maybe we should just not reflexively jump into college just as a duh, of course I'm going to go to college type thing. Maybe not do that and actually pause for 1 second and think about, does that make sense or not? Do I need to go to college or not? What will that do for me? Why am I going to college? Examine your reasons and think about where you're at and why you're doing this. That's what I'm saying. So I hope that makes sense. And in the end, you will make your own individual risk assessment. Assess your own risk. Are you at risk? Are you in danger? Would you endanger yourself by going to college? And be honest. Don't fool yourself. Don't kid yourself. Because you're only going to be harming yourself. You're not going to be harming me. I don't know you, right? But that's my plea to my fellow sisters, is just pause and reflect and be introspective a little bit instead of reflexively, like we were just talking about me reflexively thinking, oh, I'm such a loser because I finished college, but I didn't go to grad school and I got married instead.
Khalid, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, there's something wrong with your voice. It's vibrating like a lot. So I couldn't hear most of what you said, unfortunately. Are you using microphone?
Yes, I am.
Is
Is it
it
better?
headset? Is it headphones? No. Maybe you can just
Ooh.
I don't know, pull it out and then like push it in a bit further. I don't know. I think it's from when you speak, it's vibrating a lot and it's making it not easy to understand. Basically, I just couldn't make out most of what you said, and it was a very, very important question coming from a 16-year-old girl in the UK. Can you speak it now? Can you try it?
Is this at all
No,
better? No.
it's vibrating a lot.
Oh my goodness.
Can you take the mic out? Like, if you got, is it a headset you're using? Can you take the whole thing out?
No, it's not a headset. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, it's better now.
Is it?
Yes, it's great. Yes,
Okay.
it's good. What did you do?
Nothing.
It's good. Nothing? Okay, now it's better. Mashallah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yes. So basically, she was saying, right, you only say Muslim girls shouldn't go to university because you yourself have been to Harvard. Like you've been there, you've done that. And why shouldn't we go to university and get educated? What's wrong with that, right? If you could just briefly repeat what you just said, because I just couldn't make out most of it.
Sure. Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with my audio. It's better now?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. So basically, I get this a lot, and I do want to say that, subhanAllah, it's like a lose-lose situation for me. And I'm not complaining about it. I'm just noting it. But it's if I did not go to college, and I was here telling Muslim women, oh, I don't know about going to college. Be careful when you make the decision to go to college. I think the response would be, what do you know? You haven't even gone to college. So just like sit there and shut up. We don't know what you're talking about. And if I had gone to an average college, people would say, and I was saying, oh, be careful going to college and it's not necessarily the best route. People would say, well, yeah, duh, you went to like a community college. What do you know? And if I go to a top tier college, a brand name Ivy League school, then people would say, you're such a hypocrite. You went to Harvard, you went to Ivy League school, and you're telling the rest of us not to go. Those are losing. Whatever I say, if I had,
you're never gonna win.
I'm never gonna win. It's always I'm either a hypocrite or I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm just noting that fact, and you can make of that what you will. And basically, this is the feminist hegemony. This is the feminist narrative all over again, because the idea is women need to go to college. This is part of your identity. This is part of your independence and your individualism. And otherwise, you are an oppressed slave. So this is what we've been. So I'm not begrudging you your resistance to my ideas. It's okay. I understand. But what I will say is I'm not going to walk it back. I didn't say do not go to college. Like you, the average individual Muslim girl, I forbid you from going to college. I'm not going to say that. That's not what I'm saying. And I can't say that because I don't know you. I don't know your life. So what I am saying is think before you reflexively, in a knee-jerk way, jump into college. Don't do that. Think first. Think about the risks and the pros and cons, weigh the benefits and the dangers, weigh the harms and the dangers that you would be putting yourself in. Because what matters is the akhirah. The dunya matters as well, because we live in the dunya. But what matters more than the dunya is the akhirah. So you be careful with what you're doing and the decisions that you make now as a 16, 17, 18-year-old girl. And I'm not saying give up your life, give up, luxuries in this dunya. You should live like a slave, or you should live in a hut. Again, we have to, we live in the dunya. We have to make our way and all of that. But just ask yourself, what is a degree really going to do for me? Where's my path? What's really going to make me fulfilled? What is really going to make me happy? And again, understanding the fact that you are a woman, you're not a man. And in this way, in this dunya, especially with the feminist narrative, we've been taught androgyny. Do you know what that means? We've been taught androgyny, meaning a man is just like a woman. We are identical, like clones of each other. So that's not the case. So ask yourself, as a woman, what will make me the happiest? And do I have a family support network? Do I have family to fall back on? Am I okay with the potential dangers and disasters that I might fall into in college because of the statistics? The statistics are real. People losing their iman in college, especially girls, losing your virginity, getting into alcohol, drugs, zina, and we talked about so all of that. Are you okay with all of that? And you can tell yourself, I would never fall into the haram. Obviously, I'm a good person. I'm a good Muslim, right? That's fine. I don't doubt that. I'm sure you're a good person. I'm sure you're a beautiful Muslim. MashaAllah, may Allah increase you. It's totally fine. But ask yourself, like, do I want to put myself in that kind of fitna for what? Like, for what? What's the upside? You're risking all of these things because you have to admit there's risks. And what I would like to do is just initiate a conversation about the risks of college, the dangers, the potential dangers of college. That is it. And then I'll step back and you make your own risk assessment. You're a smart girl. You think about it for you in your life. I don't know your life, but I just want to start this conversation about what are the risks. We've been taught to have this blind spot where we're like, oh, the upsides of college. I'm going to have money. I'm going to have a career. I'm going to have a degree. This is it. But what about here? There's a massive mountain over here of the risks, the threats, the dangers, the cons. We're just looking at the pros. What I'm saying is, please lift this veil over here, this curtain, this veil of ignorance. Lift it and look at this mountain here, this pile of all of these dangers. And then ask yourself, does this pile of dangers, does this justify the potential pros that I'm going to get? Because nothing guarantees a job. Nothing. Not even a degree from Harvard or Princeton or Stanford or Yale, whatever. Nothing will guarantee you a job. Rizq is from Allah. So ask yourself, am I okay with the potential dangers to my akhirah? Because potentially I want a higher job in my dunya. I want more money in the dunya. Even though I also want to get married anyway. And I probably won't use my college degree because I'm going to end up getting pregnant because I actually want to have a baby. I actually want to be a wife and a mother. Ask yourself, so what are you doing it for? And then the debt. What am I going to do with my debt? Am I going to put that on my husband? He has to pay $150K for me as I get pregnant and stay home because I don't want to work when I'm pregnant. Duh. Right? Ask yourself. That's what I'm saying. So.
Next question. I think that was a very good answer overall. Just everyone go through the pros and cons, weigh out the negatives and positives, and make your own decision, right? And I say to my daughters the example, like when I went to university, that's when I decided, like, now because you're exposed to all these ideas and ideologies and people from different backgrounds and cultures, and I was like, now I know I'm going to be a Muslim, right? That's when I decided, like, I need to become a Muslim now. I start becoming more like, I start practicing and praying. But I agree, this is not the experience with everyone else. The odds of someone's having their faith shaken and weakened is a lot more. And so sometimes we use the experience like, oh, so-and-so went to university and they became a better Muslim and they started praying and covering and, observing hijab and whatnot. It's very rare. And in this case, yes, hidayah was from Allah. The guidance was from Allah. Like, I could be doing anything. I could be like clubbing, and my parents wouldn't know. I was like miles away in a totally different city, staying in a student dorm, and nobody would know. No siblings, no parents, no protection, no guardian. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it was truly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who protected me and guided me, and I was like, okay, now I want to become a real Muslim now. But it may or may not happen, and it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then constantly be making dua. I think we should always be making dua that may Allah guide us, guide our children, guide our whoever comes after us, future generations, subhanAllah. Yeah, go ahead. We just have one more question. Do you want to add something?
Oh, no, I was saying Ameen.
Ameen. Yes, subhanAllah, we've got a couple more questions, but this one. I hate the fact that you always blame women for most marital issues. How about men? We don't have decent Muslim men left on earth for all Muslim women. Men are awful nowadays. They don't provide or protect, but only demand X, Y, Z, such as sex, have a child, cook and clean, etc., etc. Which is true, by the way. I've heard, like, I get emails from women, and most Muslim men do demand 50-50 towards the maintenance, or and then they have very little to do, like, in the house. They demand 50-50, and then the women still has to go through pregnancy and, like, deliver a baby, etc., etc. So they receive very little support in that regard. So it also builds up a lot of resentment, right? and it puts off other women who are watching this scenario like, oh, what's the point of getting married in the first place? What do you think?
So I'm not denying, right, I understand what the sister is saying, and I understand her hating me for thinking or it seeming like I'm constantly blaming only.
What's the question?
Question
first of all, do you blame women for most marital issues? I think that's the
is that
question.
The question? Okay, I understand. So I understand that it looks that way. So I don't blame you, sister. I get it. The reality is, as I said, it's not solely women's fault. I would never put everything on women or the majority on women. And it's not solely men's fault. And it's not nobody's fault either. I'm not, some people, when they try to resolve conflict, they say, it's not my fault. It's not your fault. It's nobody's fault. SubhanAllah, it's just, they just know this is not. It is certainly there. Blame lays somewhere, right? Blame has to lie somewhere, because otherwise we're not going to get anywhere. We're just absolving everybody of everything, almost like denying the problem. So we're not here to do that. What we do want to do, as I said earlier, is there's a system that we want to recognize the existence of. There is a larger macro level set of systems that are like a web, and they're in place. The legal system, the family court system, the educational system, the entertainment system. There's systems upon systems.
Yeah.
And what the problem is, where the problem comes in, where I think you see me as blaming women more, it has to do with the age that we're living in. Certainly, let me get it out of the way and say, certainly men have a share of the blame. And, some men are not responsible. They are not protective. They are not providers. They are not leaders, right? They don't have, they don't act as a qawwam. Allah says, الرجال قوامون على النساء, right? So certain men do not qualify as rijal because they're not قوامون على النساء. They do not qualify. They do not act the way that Allah has commanded them to act. They don't take the role that Allah has placed upon them. Because guess what? It's not a man's choice whether or not he's qawwam. It's not a man's choice whether or not he's a protector, provider, leader, imam for his family. He has to do those things because Allah has provided him with that role. And he will be mas'ul. As the Prophet ﷺ says, أَلَا كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ, right? Verily, each one of you is a shepherd, and each one of you is going to be responsible / asked about, accountable for his ra'iyya, his flock. So it's not, a man doesn't choose whether or not he's going to be responsible for a wife and kids and his family, whether or not Allah will ask him or not. Allah will ask him. He will be, the word mas'ul, it means responsible, but it also means, it comes from su'al, to ask a question. So Allah will question him. What did you do? How did you provide? How did you protect? How did you lead? How did you treat your wife, your children? And a man will have to answer in front of Allah on the day where we stand individually in front of Allah. A woman does not have to answer to Allah for how she provided financially for her husband. She doesn't have the same, of course she will be questioned, but not about those things. So we don't pick our battles. We don't pick our roles, right? That's the first thing. What I am saying, my conversations generally, if you see my Facebook posts or if you ever hear me speak, I'm a woman, so I speak primarily to my fellow women, my fellow sisters. And yes, there are men who fail in their duty. They shirk their duty. They want their wives to work, and they want, not out of necessity, but because he's lazy or he's negligent, he's irresponsible. Of course, I would never condone that, and I don't condone that. That is a lack of rujula, a lack of masculinity, a lack of manliness, right? He's shirking his duty, and he's kind of messing up the roles a little bit, right? And it's also unfair. I understand and I hear you about it's unfair for a woman to do half of a man's job outside, protecting, providing, whatever, financials, plus do 100% of the job inside, like the domestic sphere, cooking, cleaning, children, right? So that's not fair to anybody. That's why in Islam, we don't have that. We don't have that. It's a very clear division of labor, and it leads to the optimal performance of both roles. The woman over here, the man over here, and we both optimally, because we're wired towards certain things. We have different inclinations based on gender, as psych studies and research studies will show that not by Muslims, by non-Muslims, right? But it corroborates. Not that we need that, but if we're in doubt, it corroborates for us what Allah has laid down and the wisdom and the beauty of it, right? So a man asking his wife to work, it's not like a feminist woman saying, no, I'm going to work, I'm independent, but her husband saying, you have to go out and work. You have to pay 50% of the bills. He's messing up the system now, right? That's not okay. Just like I would also say it's not okay if a wife is deserting her duty. She's shirking her responsibilities. in order to fulfill her dreams and ambitions, to go out and work needlessly while neglecting her children and her household and her husband. I would say she's shirking her duties. That's not okay. That's irresponsible. A man making her do this, forcing her to do this, is also irresponsible. He's shirking his duties. So we got to be fair. We got to be even-handed, and I always try to do that. But why I talk more about women, I'm talking to women. I'm a woman. So as a woman, I talk to my fellow sisters naturally. The second part, this is a reality. We live in a very feminist age. This is a gynocentric world. And if you can't see that, you'd really have to dig deep into the forces and the systems that surround us, right? Men have become, not to sound melodramatic, but
I think they have a lot of grievances because a lot of the issues are hardly addressed on mainstream media.
They are addressed. I don't know. And I'm sorry, I'm going to push back against that. I'm sorry. How are they hardly addressed when all these compassionate imams are like, oh, sisters, you are a queen. Please, brothers have to step up. Brothers, you need to be better. Brothers, you have to do better. Constantly on the minbar.
No. I'm talking about men, Men.
The men's issues?
The men's, yes, men have got a lot of grievances because their issues have never been addressed on mainstream media, over the past, I don't know, however many decades, right? And that's why they have been left out. You're trying to balance it out. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Because we are constantly hearing about how men have failed, men are horrible, men are they need to man up, they need to step up. And non-Muslims say this from feminism and all of that, second wave, third wave feminism, but also the sad, depressing thing is we have our own imams and our own community leaders parroting back the same tired cliches, saying, Muslim men, why aren't you married to older women who have already lost their fertility window? You need to man up and marry these women. Why do you want what you want? Hello, we don't tell women, why do you want a rich, tall man? We want what we want. We're allowed to have that. Men are not allowed to have that. Do you know what I mean? I'm being real. All these things, men, you have to do better and be better and step up and man up. No one tells women you need to woman up. No one says that, right? So now I look like a hater. I just look like I hate women because you don't hear my message very often, which is there's an imbalance, right, sister?
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge there's a big imbalance. Men are just, if they ask anything, then they're demanding, they're controlling, they're toxic masculine. And women, we are allowed to make whatever demands we want. And we're just queens. Slay queen, yes queen, right? No one calls men king. Who says that men are kings? Nobody. So.
Yeah, that's a general culture. I'd like to wrap up with that. I've read a book recently by Salman Asif Siddiqui, and it's called In the Siege of False Gods. And he talks about the absence of culture that's based on Islamic beliefs and values. So most of us, we call ourselves Muslims. This is everywhere, right? This is in Saudi Arabia. This is in Pakistan. This is in Uzbekistan, Egypt, right? We call ourselves Muslims. We pray the 5 times Salah. We cover, we fast, we pay zakat, etc., etc. But the general culture is based on materialism, like consumerism, liberalism. So that kind of overtakes. And then we limit, in the presence of these cultures that's dominating our society, that's giving the direction where the people are heading. We limit Islam to these 5 pillars, basically, just fast and pray and pay your zakat, and then but this is only 1/3 of Islam, basically. The ulama said that remaining 2/3 of your Islam is your transactions and your dealings and your muamalat and your muasharat. And that's why so we see someone who's praying 5 times a day, and they don't think twice before they take a bank loan for buying a new car or upgrading their kitchen or whatever. It's just a common thing, and they lie, or they easily take advantage of the weak in the society for their financial gains. So things like that have become a very commonplace. Why? Because we don't have a culture that's based on Islamic values and beliefs. We all have these hidden values and beliefs that we soaked up with from this, mainly materialism, I would say. Materialism, consumerism, liberalism, And it's really amazing when you sit down and think, contemplate, when you make a choice or when you make a decision, what values and beliefs I have that is driving this choice or that is driving this decision. Like, I've done this exercise numerous times, and subhanallah, it is like we want to live out in this dunya as if it is Jannah. Like, we want everything. We have certain standards of living, that we want to go on holiday at certain times a year. We want to wear certain, clothes, and we want to eat out certain number of times a month, etc., etc. So it's because of these living standards that we put on ourselves that we have to maintain. We're not happy with just husband's salary. Like, we demand more, we want more, because we have to maintain this standards of living that we committed ourselves to, and all in the name of materialism, consumerism. So it just destroys the whole society. And you think that, yes, I am a Muslim, I'm a practicing Muslim, but each one of us, I think we have so many layers of hidden beliefs and values that we grew up with, because we grew up in this culture, and we took all that in. And subhanAllah, we really have to sit down, contemplate, and do the digging within ourselves, because we are not like this dunya. Again, like going back to aqidah, right? This dunya, like, we're born, Allah created us to test and worship Him, and we will die, and that's the real life. We will enter real life. So live for the akhirah, focus on the akhirah. Jazakumullah khair, everyone, for joining us today. MashaAllah, thank you, Khalid. It has been wonderful discussion. Do you have any final words, final thoughts? Anything to say?
I just want to thank you for having me. Jazakumullah khair. Wallahi, this has been really fun and really interesting for me. And I hope for you and for the audience, inshallah. And inshallah, for anything wrong I may have said, that is, any mistakes I made are solely from me and shaitan, and anything good or anything right I may have said is from Allah. So alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, and just thank you again. Jazakallah khair.
Ameen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, inshallah. Please share this video with friends and family, and make dua that Allah grants us the correct understanding of the deen, inshallah. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.